This list features, in my opinion, the least fun games to 1K in terms of sheer boredom, clunky controls, or missed gameplay opportunities. These games can be completed fairly easily, but do you want to? Do you want them staining your gamer card with shame? Here's my list of the worst, most boring, grindy 1K completion Xbox games. The Game of Thrones RPG game that was released in 2012 spent almost 10 years languishing in development hell. Once the TV show came out, however, it was a whole new ballgame. With increased funds and interest, they were able to finish the game and even get voiceover cameos from Jane Cosmos, aka Lord Commander Mormont, and Conleith Hill, aka Lord Varys. Unfortunately, the game was pretty much panned across the board. Because it was trapped in development for so long, the gameplay, graphics and style were pretty dated. Not to mention the fact that it was nowhere near as detailed as the show in both scale and plot. There are brief moments of interesting storytelling and the two lead characters are compelling enough to keep you playing, but in the end Game of Thrones ends up being a fairly unfulfilling slog and a bit of a grindy 1K completion. Speaking of licensed games, Saw the Game was a clunky, chunky, hot mess. Featuring a buck-wild camera and irritating controls, the game consisted of easy puzzles, cheap jump scares, and annoying AI. Saw the Game is a grind from beginning to end. The frustration you feel while playing completely ruins any chance of scares and builds up exactly the wrong kind of tension. The follow-up game Saw 2 smoothed out a lot of the rougher edges, but unless you're a completionist, I would recommend giving both of them a miss. You'd think the game developers would stop trying to make licensed games, considering so few of them are actually good. Golden Compass is the worst children's movie to video game adaptation possibly ever. Riddled with graphical glitches, terrible level design, and all-around boring gameplay. The general consensus from the gaming community was that the game had been rushed out to capitalise on the movie release, with little care being taken to actually make a good game. It's easy to 1K in theory, but game-breaking glitches may end up with you ripping your hair out and a half-completed game staining your profile. This entry has the dubious distinction of being one of the worst superhero games ever made, simply due to an overwhelming amount of missed opportunities. It was supposed to be an action role-playing game that boasted a non-linear, choice-based storyline in the X-Men universe, with a focus on levelling up skill trees and character-specific perks. But it ended up being more disappointing than dish soap-flavoured pancakes. The end result featured generic characters in a generic superhero story with generic gameplay. It's a real shame because an X-Men RPG open world game would have been amazing. Unfortunately, X-Men Destiny ended up being average across the board, and eventually it was even removed from the Xbox store. An easy 1K, but an absolutely forgettable experience. Now I'll be honest up front. The Dear God is actually a pretty decent game with a unique storyline and interesting game mechanic. However, I played the game when it was first released after it was put on the Xbox Games with Gold program and discovered it was pockmarked with achievement-related glitches, and I'm still feeling salty about it. Irritatingly, the achievements that were glitched were 3 of the longer ones to complete, which meant that each successive assurance from the developers that the glitches had been fixed, and each successive attempt to try and gain said achievements, only to end in abject failure, left a bitter taste in my mouth that remains to this day. So there's nothing inherently wrong with UDraw Studio Instant Artist. It was primarily advertised for children and came with a tablet and pen peripheral, so you could draw whatever you fancied to your heart's content. Had it just remained an art game, it would have been a quick, easy and painless 1K. But unfortunately a decision was made to include mini-games. Alien Splat was essentially like a high-tech version of Whack-A-Mole with a boss battle. 2 achievements made UDraw a real pain to 1K. The first being to reach level 10 of Alien Splat, which had to be done in one sitting and took a little over an hour to accomplish. The second achievement was to finish the first 2 levels of Alien Splat without losing a life. To add to the annoyance factor, the tablet wasn't set up at all to be a gaming controller, and you'd die occasionally because the tablet failed to recognise the button presses, or simply because your hand had cramped up holding a cumbersome square of plastic and hammering the A button for an hour. Finally, adding insult to injury, UDraw is now impossible to 1K. The achievement to exporting a painting has been discontinued after the game developers THQ went under. The park isn't remotely frightening whatsoever, and I startle so easily a mouse farting from a mile away is enough to make me jump. It's supposed to be a story-driven game in the horror genre full of jump scares and creepy tension, but it ends up being a boring 2-hour walk through an old amusement park. The park is clearly attempting to emulate Gone Home, with zero success. Another strange thing about the game is that it's supposed to be a spin-off of an MMORPG called The Secret World, and supposedly shares its characters and locations with the park. There was even a tie-in mission that was only playable on Halloween. However, since 2017, when the game was relaunched as Secret World Legends, they dropped the tie-in mission, seemingly also dropping all connections with the park. Still, it's an easy 1k as long as you can finish it before you doze off from boredom. The Terminator Salvation movie was not a big hit with fans of the franchise. It only earned $371 million to a $200 million budget, so it should come as no surprise that the video game adaptation was even less of a hit. Christian Bale, who played John Connor in the movie, point-blank refused to even lend his likeness and voice to the video game. Not that his appearance would have saved it, to be honest. The game takes less than 5 hours to complete, and the achievement list is as easy as they come. An achievement for each level completed, and 3 difficulty-related achievements. However, Terminator Salvation made the mistake a lot of games have made. You can just play the last level on hard, and you'll unlock the achievement like you finished the whole game on that difficulty setting. The AI poses absolutely no challenge at all, especially if you play on easy. The story's pretty generic, with average squad-based running and gunning gameplay. The cover system's pretty good, but that's about all it has going for it. I don't want to sound cruel, because I know Horse Racing 2016 was made by a small indie developer, but honestly, it looks like it was created inside Microsoft Paint. The achievement list only takes 2-ish hours to complete, but it'll be a tedious couple of hours. It's almost impossible to lose at the races, and the only time you fail is when the impatience gets too much and you try and rush through the same boring looking races you've been playing for the last hour. The only part of the game that requires any skill is the hurdles races, but with the way the achievement list has been set up, it's not really that big a deal to not come in first. As long as you beat 50 races in the top 3 slot, you'll walk away a winner with a new game on your completion list. Most achievement hunters will have this game staining their gamer profile. I've played it, you've played it, we've all played it. There are only 5 achievements to get a 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50 times combo. All 5 achievements can be busted out in less than a minute from the very beginning of the game. I can't even give the game a decent review because I didn't play the rest of it. I'm not sure anyone has played the rest of it. Burning Earth was one of the last games to ever be released on the Game Boy Advance, and that's probably the only notable thing about it. The game didn't do very well commercially, and it was hard to pick up a copy of it. I remember there was a guy on eBay UK that offered a paid service where you could send him your gamer profile information, he would complete the game for you, and then delete the profile off his console. Judging from his pretty great feedback score, there were some very happy achievement hunters in the UK. Personally, I just rented it. It may stain my profile, but at least I didn't pay for it with cold hard cash. Okay, so I know this is probably going to be a little bit controversial, but I feel like an honourable mention has to go to the LEGO games. Now don't get me wrong, I very much enjoy the LEGO games. I've played a whole bunch of them. They've made millions of them. The problem, however, is when you come to try and 1k them, there are so many collectibles. There are so many. Golden bricks, red bricks, specific builds. You need to unlock all of the characters. There are certain areas of the game that can only be unlocked by certain characters who have the right perk you need to get past, I don't know, a stainless steel wall or up a ladder or that can fly or something like that. So it turns a game that really you could finish in about 5 to 6 hours, the main story mode, and it just stretches it right out to like a 40 to 50 hour game. Now, if the games ran beautifully well, that might not be that big of a deal, but there are so many of them, particularly the older ones, that are riddled with glitches. Absolutely riddled to the brim with glitches. And seemingly never get patched either. Completing the first LEGO Harry Potter game, years 1 to 4, was just a nightmare, from beginning to end. There was one time when I was playing it, where the gold brick I was supposed to be collecting, or was it a red brick? I can't remember, it was a brick of some kind, and it bloody well disappeared. It just disappeared right in front of me. And I turned my Xbox off, I went back in, it had still disappeared. I had to leave it, I went to a different area, I went back, it wasn't there. It was only through the luck of the gods that somehow, when I went back to it quite a few hours in, it had managed to just reappear. And trust me when I tell you, I am one of the lucky ones. When I was following the collectibles guide, I also had another guide open, which, and I swear to you this is true, was a glitch guide. It was a way to avoid all of the many glitches in Harry Potter years 1 to 4, several of which were game-breaking and you'd have to start again. So, as much as the LEGO games are very enjoyable if you're just a casual gamer and you're just going to enjoy story mode, 100%ing them is a real trial of endurance and patience, and I have the utmost respect for anybody who has more than 5 LEGO completions on their gamer card. You are a legend. I bow down to you. So there you have it, guys, a list of the games I found to be the least fun to 1K. Now, bear in mind, I've only included games on this list that I've actually 100%ed myself, so it's very likely that I've missed a handful of other incredibly tedious games. So feel free to let me know in the comments any games you've played that you found to be incredibly tedious, that you fell asleep halfway through playing, or balded yourself ripping your hair out in frustration attempting to complete it.